Greetings to you, your speaker is Isaac. Today's story is as old as history. It is said that it is the oldest written story in the history of humanity. We will talk about one of the greatest stories of humanity that represents our greatest mistake, which is arrogance. The story of the Epic of Gilgamesh from the Sumerian civilization, dated 2500 BC.
Location: Uruk, a beautiful and powerful city standing in the middle of the desert. But what really distinguished the city were its great walls that made it an impenetrable fortress. This city was ruled by the powerful king Gilgamesh, but he was not like any other king. He was half human and half god. His father was a human king and his mother was a god. Gilgamesh's physical qualities were extraordinary. He was a strong giant to the point that he would fight lions and bulls with his bare hands and kill them without even scratching them. This strength transformed him from a powerful king to his people into a dictator. One of the images of his dictatorship was that he would have sex with any bride in the city before she got married. The men worked digging rivers and paving roads until they collapsed from exhaustion. When the sun sets and they go to sleep, he beats the drums and roams the city so that the people do not sleep. When the people got tired of him, they prayed to the Assyrian god to have mercy on them. The gods met and issued their verdict. They will create a strong person to stand up to Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh will be busy with him and leave the people because his arrogance will not allow him to have someone as strong as him in the city. In fact, the god created Enkidu, a giant, strong man with a primitive appearance, full of hair, and he lived in the wilderness with the animals. As time passed, the palace hunters went to hunt the animals, but they were surprised that all the traps were broken. They saw Enkidu saving the animals, so they were terrified of him, and went to Gilgamesh and told him the story. He thought that the matter was not worth his time, so he said to them, "You need to make this primitive civilized. Take a woman with you so that he will be attracted to her and begin to learn about humans." So he sent with them a woman named Shamhat. In fact, Enkidu fell in love with Shamhat and began to spend time with her until the animals began rebelling. Enkidu went away from him, so Shamhat told him that animals are not our friends but rather food for us. In the city of Uruk, we have everything you need. Come with me and leave the wilderness so that the hunters can hunt. And in fact, Enkidu went with her. On his way to the city, they found a group of Bedouins. The Bedouins offered them food and drink. Enkidu sat with them for a while and learned from them how to eat and drink. And in order to return the favor, he became their night plowman. At this time, in Gilgamesh's palace, the king was having dreams about a friend whom the people loved. But Gilgamesh was surprised because he did not find anyone strong enough to make him his friend. One day, a man from the city came to the Bedouins, fleeing from Gilgamesh's rule. Enkidu sat with him and heard his whole story. He was angry at how Gilgamesh could oppress the people like this. So he learned from the man that a celebration was coming up in the city soon, and he decided to go to stop him from oppressing the people. And in fact, Enkidu went to the heart of the city and challenged Gilgamesh in the midst of his people. Gilgamesh looked at him with an angry look. "Who dares to stand in the way of my desires?" And by the action, the two men wrestled, and the struggle was equal in strength between them, until Gilgamesh gathered his strength and threw Enkidu to the ground with difficulty. But he did not kill him. He remembered his dreams about the strong companion and was sure that this was him, and he looked at him with a look of respect because he was the only strong person for him. He respected him. Gilgamesh extended his hand to Enkidu, and they became friends. Enkidu sat in the palace with Gilgamesh, and the days passed, and Enkidu felt sad because life in the palace was boring, and he wanted adventures, so Gilgamesh knew that. He gathered the council of elders and Enkidu, and told them that he and his friend would go on an adventure. Enkidu and I were happy, and as soon as Gilgamesh finished speaking that they would go to kill the monster Kunbaba, silence and astonishment fell on everyone's faces, including Enkidu's, because Kunbaba is a strong demon who spews fire from his mouth and guards the sacred cedar forest. It is said that the Council of Gods is in it. By the action, Gilgamesh and Enkidu went out on their adventure. The historical until they reached the forest and began to chop wood to light a fire. Kunbaba heard them and appeared to them and began to warn them, "Get out of my forest." Fear entered their hearts, but each of them drew his courage from the other. In fact, the battle began between them until the three of them knew that the battle would not end until they all died. However, the sun god Shamash intervened to help the two friends. In fact, Kunbaba fell into the hands of the two friends and Gilgamesh put his sword on Kunbaba's neck. Kunbaba began to beg Gilgamesh to leave him alive and he would live as his slave forever. Enkidu looked at Gilgamesh and told him, "If you do not do it, our journey will have no goal and your people will not believe you." Gilgamesh raised his sword and before killing Kunbaba, he told them, "With the union of the two, the impossible must be defeated. The two must be separated, whether by breaking the sword or destroying the shield." Gilgamesh lowered his hand and cut off his head and began to chop wood to make a boat and return to Uruk.